Okay, my name is Tracy Hopkins and I'm a chaplain at Foundation Christian College. I have started being the chaplain only this year, so it's been quite a journey for me, and I've spent the last 6 or 7 years being a special needs education assistant in a special needs school. My journey is that as children we were brought up in Sunday school. My grandma went to church every Sunday, and so my parents didn't go to church, but as kids, me and my brother and sister and my cousins, we all went to Sunday school. So God has sort of always been a part of my life. Obviously I knew him as a little girl, and I haven't always sort of followed perhaps the path that God had chosen for me, but he's always been in my life. He's always been that one constant in my life. So I've never got sort of radically saved, so to speak, but God has always been journeying with me right from when I was young. Becoming a chaplain, I guess, was something I never really thought of becoming. It's really a door that God has opened for me. So as I journeyed through my life, I found myself in a very bad marriage. And I had 3 children, and we lived in domestic violence for 10 years. And during that time, obviously God was with me, and you're always praying and believing and hoping that things would get better and that things would change. But there's this realization that God can't go against another person's will, and if you're not willing to change, if you're not really willing to surrender your heart to the Lord, then God can't do anything. And so after 10 years, I left my marriage with my children for the safety of my children, and I then had to go to work. So I found myself in a situation where I had no education, no money, 3 kids, and life was very, very difficult. And I remember this one moment where I was standing at the kitchen window washing my dishes, and I was crying, and I said to the Lord, I can't do this. You know, I felt like I needed to go back to my husband because I was not surviving financially. I couldn't buy food for the kids, and life was really hard, and I was crying. And I remember looking out the window, and I saw this willywag, and he came and he was bathing underneath the reticulation that had come on. It was a really hot day, and he was bathing underneath this reticulation. And the Lord said to me as I was watching this willywag, look at this bird. He doesn't sow nor reap, and yet I take care of him. And how much more am I going to take care of you, because you are my daughter? And I knew at that moment that no matter what I was going to face over the next couple of years in my life, that God was with me. And so I said, okay, Lord, what's my next step? What do I do? And so I went back to school, and I went to TAFE, and I re-educated myself, and I became a special needs education assistant, and I got a job working at an special needs school. And it was just wonderful. I loved it. I loved my independence of having a job. I loved the children that I worked with. And one day we had this little boy come in, and he wasn't in ed support because he had a disability. He was in ed support because he'd come out of domestic violence. And he just touched my heart. This little boy absolutely touched my heart. He was just the most gorgeous little boy. He had massive behaviour problems, and he was very low academically, but I just connected with this child, and I just knew that I needed to do more than just be an education assistant. And so I went online and looked into counselling, and I started my counselling degree with the idea that I would specialise in child trauma. Not only because of this little boy, but also now seeing my own children experience child trauma and having to journey with my own children coming out of domestic violence. And that journey has been really difficult, but it's been incredible to watch how God has restored not only myself but also my kids. And so when I started working at Foundies, I started here as a special needs EA, and the position of female chaplain became available. And I was just chatting to the principal about it one day, and he did not realise that I was actually studying and that my dream was to go into helping children that have been through trauma. And so when he realised that, and he realised that I was studying, he offered me the position as chaplain. And I couldn't get past it. I went home, I prayed about it, and here I am. So, and I think for me, if I can help even just one child not go through the things that my children have experienced, or be that support for one child that is going through these things, it's just all worth it. Absolutely worth it. So I'm believing that these God moments I have with these students will impact their life in some way, shape or form, and bringing them closer to the Lord, but also just having somebody that they can trust, someone that they can talk to, share hard stuff with, and a shoulder to cry on, and somebody to listen, really. So that's really my role here, and I'm really grateful to God that He has brought me through the journey that He has. It really is a miracle that I have come through such trauma and I still am functioning, and my children are doing amazingly well, and they are a testimony of God's restoration in their lives. Okay, so if you're looking for signs in trauma for children, you would look for anger outbursts, aggressive behaviours, then also that withdrawing, especially girls. Boys sort of go to the anger. Girls will withdraw. So now you've got a child that all of a sudden does not want to engage in school. They don't want to engage with their peers. Their schoolwork is starting to drop. Academically, they're not doing very well. When you get home, they're not really engaging in family. Or then you've got obviously the extreme of the anger, the aggression, wanting to beat up their siblings, wanting to lash out at you, verbally as well. The meltdowns, definitely, and certainly anxiety is definitely a big one to look for. I certainly had to deal with the internal side of getting a divorce, especially because we were Christians, and my husband was also, would say, a Christian. So he is somebody that just was really struggling with his own demons, and obviously he had a horrific childhood himself, and so there was this side of him that loved God and would try really hard, but he just had this other side of him that was quite violent. And yeah, so it was difficult. In saying that, I guess I stayed in a domestic violence relationship for longer than probably I should have, or what we should have, because I really struggled with, but we're Christians, God can change us, God can change him, and I'm really praying for restoration. And I think the pivotal thing for me was realising that sometimes we keep doing the same things over and over again and expect a different result. And history told me that my husband was not going to change. So 10 years down the track, and we'd been to counselling, we'd been through different marriage courses, different parenting courses, and yet the domestic violence still continued. And I was really trapped now in the cycle, because when you get to the honeymoon phase of domestic violence, it's fantastic. He's sorry for what he's done, he's buying you whatever you want, he's being so nice to you and the children, and you can live in this honeymoon phase, and you crave for it to come back to that honeymoon phase. And you don't know how long you're going to stay in that. You could be in that for one day, you could be in that for 3 weeks. And so when you get into that cycle, it is very, very difficult to actually get out of it. If you find yourself in this domestic violence cycle, to never be afraid to tell people. Even if you are a Christian and it's happening in church, never ever be afraid to grab some people and say, hey, this is what's happening to me. And and get the support around you that you need. It doesn't have to be in church. There's plenty of support organisations to help women that are in domestic violence, to help you actually be able to break the cycle and leave. And I think that's the thing. It's very difficult to break the cycle on your own. So my biggest thing would be to get that support around you, get people that can actually get you out of that situation and help you break that cycle and help you get free. It's fantastic working as a chaplain in a Christian school rather than a public school. That's because we already have the Christian curriculum running through our school. So I have the students come in and I can pray with the students openly and freely with them, because at the end of the day we know that God is the only one that can really reach inside and heal our hearts. And I get that opportunity to talk to the kids about God and how God can heal them, to talk to girls. We've got, students that have come out of broken marriages that don't have a dad at home, or dad's never been a part of their lives, and I can talk to them about how God is the father to the fatherless and how they can put their trust in God and He can be their father, and really get to pray with them and touch base with them on a regular basis and really have that support connection with them where they're building relationship with me, somebody that they can now trust, and in turn I'm implanting and imparting into them something that's eternal, and that they can, when they leave school, they can take that with them inside. So it's absolutely fantastic to be working as a chaplain in a Christian school, because there's just so much more freedom to be able to talk about God and things of God. So the rewards to this job is definitely supporting students as they travel through. The benefit of being a long-term chaplain is that you get to meet students in year 1. And in year 8 or 9, you're still there and you're still supporting them through their journey, and you're building that connection, that friendship, that relationship, and you just don't know where that sort of leads as the kids leave school. It's being able to impart and to speak into their lives and help them through really, really hard stuff, knowing that you're imparting eternity into them and connecting them with the Lord and bringing them into that relationship with God, because that is the thing that's going to carry them through their life. Just like it did for me. I knew God when I was little, and I've gone through so many challenges in my life, but God has been that one constant that has never, ever, ever let me down. And that's what I want to impart into the students. And obviously there are challenges, and I think the biggest challenge is that sometimes you hear really hard stuff. You hear really sad stories, and as a mum and as a human being, you kind of just want to jump in and be able to rescue these kids and make it all better for them, but you can't. You know that you can just be that support person, and we've got boundaries obviously, and so that probably is the most hardest part of chaplaincy, is to be able to hear those really sad stories and be able to sit with them and then be able to give those stories to the Lord and really pray for these kids, making sure that you don't carry that burden home with you, and for that burden to then affect your life with your own family. I think the best thing for me to really encourage, especially parents, is that chaplain is a confidential service. It is a service here not just for the students but also for parents as well. And sometimes parents, their kids come home and they hear stories and they might be struggling with their parenting, and they don't really want to go to a counsellor, and they certainly probably don't want to go to a doctor. So they're thinking, who can I go to that I can just really talk about, these are the issues that I'm having with my child, and what help is there available out there? Is there any courses I can go to? Or maybe they just want to talk to somebody. Chaplain, that's all part of our role as well, is not just to support the students but also to support the parents, knowing that it's a confidential service as well. So my encouragement, I guess, to students is to grab the opportunity to use your chaplain in your school, because they're there to support you and to help you and to encourage you, and also for parents as well to definitely access the chaplain service if you need to. And for the other chaplains out there, just want to encourage you. I know you guys are doing a fantastic job out there. Our job is something that we are very passionate about, and it's certainly very, very rewarding. So keep going with the good work.